and welcome to Catholic Answers Live. Thanks so much for being with us. I am Cy Kellett, your host, and man, do we have a good day lined up for you today. A very blessed Holy Week to you. It's maybe the strangest of Holy Weeks. At least in the last 2,000 years. But it's going to be a very interesting time, and we're looking forward to spending a whole bunch of hours with you this week, trying to answer questions about the Catholic faith. Really, in a lot of our priority this week is to just give praise to God, who has given everything for us on the cross, and this is the week that we remember that, and also, as we've been saying lately, to be good company. We're going to try to be good company for you. And this hour, we've got really good company for you. You all know Steve Ray, traveler, writer, filmmaker, leader of pilgrimages to the Holy Land and to many places around the world. Hello, Steve Ray.
Hello, Cy. Good to be here with you.
Well, it's good to be with you. Now, among all of us, your life must be among the most changed.
It's very changed.
Yeah.
It's very changed because we lost out on March, April, and May pilgrimage to the Holy Land. May is still, but doesn't look good. And 2 trips to Oberammergau in June and August. So pretty much we're home. And I got a trip to the Holy Land the end of July, first week of August. We put that in there for the people who missed out in March, April, May. And anybody who wants to go, it's going to be a good price because it's summer, it's the low season. But yeah, we're pretty much home. I'm writing books. I'm doing Catholic Answers Live. I'm writing the script for our next documentary movie, In the Footprints of God. It's going to be Doctors of the Church. So I'm busy, but not the way I wanted to be.
Yes, right. I guess that's true for everybody. But you're used to living out of suitcases and traveling through airports and all that. So a strange time indeed. So you're. I mean, I know we're all guessing at it, but you're thinking at summertime maybe you'll travel again.
The indications I'm getting from my contacts in Israel is that they're going to, right after Passover, start getting back to normal, which means next week. And if that's the case, then they open up their borders by July 1st even. I'll be back in Israel. I'll be the first one back. And I've got a group already. We've already getting people registered, almost a half a bus already for the end of July. So anybody wants to go summer, let us know. Hey, is it all right if I wear my hat and my bird shirt? Because, I'm a bird watcher. I love doing that on my free time. And because spring is coming and the birds are all here, I wore my bird sweatshirt today. My grandkids like this. And I'm wearing my hat. I feel right at home here with you guys today.
Yeah, well, you're kind of known for your hat, so you got all that. As a bird watcher, like what's the? Have you seen that? Whatever the rare bird is. What's your rare bird that you sought out and found?
Well, we've seen some really cool ones. We saw the snowbirds. They only come down in the coldest of years. We've only seen those once. And the rufous-sided towhee, we see him only every 4 or 5 years. But we love these sandhill cranes in our backyard. They're huge, and they wake us up in the morning, tell us it's time to get up. And we love the red rose-breasted grosbeaks and the towhees, and there's just a whole bunch of them. And I keep track of when they come every year and when they leave, and we have fun with it. We have fun with it. And the grandkids are all learning all the birds and how to tell their sounds when they're in the trees. And just a real quick thing. We heard my daughter was pregnant. She called us and said, Dad, we think we're going to have the baby. This was 3 days ago. And we said, okay, we'll run over and pick up the little guy. He's 2 years old. So she said, okay. We drove 20 minutes home, and she sent a picture of her with the baby. And I said, what's this? And my wife said, that's the kitchen floor. So my daughter went out to the car, said to her husband, I'm not going to make it, ran back in the house and had the baby on the kitchen floor.
Wow.
And they're both doing fine.
That's the thing. Okay, good. Yeah, I'm glad to hear it. Well, congratulations. Great. Another grandkid.
That's number
good for
17. You. Number 17.
Wonderful. Good. Congratulations on that. Well, I want to let folks know what we're going to do together today. Today, we're going to talk about the people at the foot of the cross. At the end of this week, or throughout the course of this week, we'll be meditating on various parts of the passion of the Lord. And as he gave his life for us on the cross, there were people at the foot of that cross, and you find meditating on each of those people to be a spiritually helpful thing to do.
Oh, yes, it was fascinating. And I just one day last year, I said, let's see how many actual different people or groups or entities were actually there. When Jesus looked down from the cross, what did he see? Who did he see?
Yeah.
And so I came up with a whole list, and we'll go through them. I think there's about 15 different groups or people, and every one is fascinating. And we can learn from every single one of them.
Well, let's do that then. Let's take a look at the people who are at the foot of the cross. Not all. It's not like Jesus was surrounded by friends. They're not all friends of his at the foot of the cross.
This is really a mixed bag.
Yeah, which is what we are. We're
That's right.
even today we're a mixed bag, looking up at the Lord on the cross. But I suppose. The first person, if you said who was at the foot of Jesus' cross, almost every person who knows the Gospels even a little bit will say Mary.
Mary and John, because they have seen the crucifixes and the paintings, and it always has Mary on one side, John on the other, looking up at Jesus. And that we're told that in the Gospel of John, that they were there at the foot of the cross. They were the first ones splashed with the blood of Jesus. After Simon the Cyrene, he was the first. But when the sword went in the side of Jesus, the lance, these two, Mary and John. And interestingly enough, Mary, she is now learning something she's been wondering about for 33 years. When Jesus was born, and at the 40th day, she wrapped that little baby up, so proud of him, took him to the temple to do the sacrifices and to present him there. And this old man named Simeon comes up, and he said, this baby will be a sign of contradiction in Israel, and many will stand or fall because of him, and a sword will pierce your soul also. What's a 15-year-old girl supposed to think of that? She's got this brand new little baby, takes him to the temple, she's going to present him, and this man comes up and said, a sword's going to pierce your soul also. Well, she doesn't know what that means. There's no indication that Mary would understand what that meant until now, when she's at the foot of the cross, she realizes what that means. And at Calvary, when I take my groups to the Holy Sepulchre, and if you want to see the official closing of the church due to the virus, it's on my blog, CatholicConvert.com. You can see the official closing. It's very sad, but you also get to see some of the inside. We'll mention it several times today in this discussion, the inside of the Holy Sepulchre and inside the tomb, like you've never seen it before. And she's now being told, up there by where the cross is, there's this beautiful statue of Mary, and her face is so realistic, and there's a sword going right into her chest. It's very graphic.
Wow.
And here you've got Mary and John at the foot of the cross. The interesting thing about those both is Mary did not have any other sons. So in Jewish custom and tradition, if she had a second-born son, Jesus would have just said, second-born son, take care of mom. But Mary did not have any other sons, so Jesus had to put her into the hands of John, the young beloved disciple, and said he says to him basically, John, take care of my mom.
And so you say that they were the first splashed with the blood of the Lord. That's very graphic, but it doesn't. As with everything with Jesus, that might sound like the most negative thing in the world, but this is the saving power of the Lord really being poured out upon them. So they're representing us at this moment, John and Mary.
They are. They're representing us. And John, when Jesus gives Mary to him as his mother, the early church and the church fathers and all of us have always seen that John represents all disciples. Therefore, he gave Mary to all of us as well. He gave her to all of us to be our mother. And Mary, on the other hand, says to this young man, "You're now my son, and you're going to take care of me, but I'm also going to take care of you in ways you don't even know." Can you imagine living with Mary your whole life? How would you live differently if she moved in and lived at your house? Anyway, and so now she becomes our mother in that symbolic way too, that the conversation between Jesus and those two, we are the disciple, Mary becomes our mother, and we become her children. And that's also, we find in the Bible that Mary's the mother of the church. The devil went out to do war against the rest of her offspring, which is us.
Right. 888-318-7884, our number. Steve Ray is our guest. We're talking about the people at the foot of the cross, the actual people who were standing there at the foot of the cross when the Lord was crucified today. 888-318-7884. You know, when you say that about Mary living in your house, one of the things that is notable about holy people, and she's as holy as you could possibly be, they actually make you, in many ways, a better person, and they don't make you feel guilty about who you are. It's just natural that they kind of bring you up. I think it would be just the greatest blessing to have her in your house.
Yeah, but you may not say everything you would say normally. You may not act the same.
No need to review those. That's right.
You may be more careful. And, she also lived with James, because James and John lived together. So James also had her in his home.
Oh.
So they lived together as extended families.
888-318-7884. The number right now, we've got that store-wide sale still going on. All books, CDs, DVDs, MP3s, ebooks, everything we've got. 10 to 25% off. In some cases, much more than 10 to 25% off. Just go to shop.catholic.com and find all the savings you might want on all kinds of Catholic books, DVDs, CDs, MP3s, and every other form of media. Shop.catholic.com.
This is Bishop Chad Zielinski from the Diocese of Fairbanks of Northern Alaska, and you are listening to Catholic Answers Live.
Hi, this is Cy. The latest episode of our podcast, Catholic Answers Focus, is available. This week we talk with Father Hugh Barber about how much theology you have to know to be a good Christian in the modern world. Is it still okay to have simple faith, or does every Christian need to take up the intellectual life? Here's a little sample.
Wisdom is a way of knowing that's the result of union with the one known. It's not like study, like understanding or science is based upon examining something and learning all about it and having it in your head. The wisdom is more a question of the adhesion of our heart and mind to the one in whom we believe and whom we love. And that's a different, it's like maternal love, or the love between a husband and his wife, or children and their parents. It's an instinctive, intuitive union that makes us know things and have a sense of things simply because of our love for the other. That's what it ends up being.
You can hear the rest and get past episodes at CatholicAnswersFocus.com or subscribe for free wherever you get your podcasts.
The leading Catholic voices are on EWTN Radio.
We talk to audiences all over the world. One thing I've found out is everybody in the whole world has the same set of questions. They live the same human life. They all want meaning. They all want love. They all want significance. They want forgiveness. That's the most fascinating thing to me. The same answers work wherever you are throughout the world, because we're all children of God.
Call to Communion with Dr. David Anders, tonight, 11 Eastern on EWTN Radio.
Welcome back to Catholic Answers Live. Steve Ray, our guest this hour. We're talking about the people at the foot of the cross. Who was there at the foot of the cross? Steve found, almost 20 people, somewhere in the high teens, people standing there at the foot of the cross. Steve, your last one is most interesting to me, but I want to take a minute before, and I'm going to get the callers. You can call 888-318-7884. I have to just tell you, I'm confused by the Marys at the foot of the cross, and maybe you could help me with that. All these women. Who are all the women that are there with Mary, the mother of Jesus, at the foot of the cross of Jesus?
Well, the reason there's so many Marys is because that was one of the most popular names. Where did it come from? It's not Mary, it's Miriam with a rolling R, which I can't do very good. Miriam, because that's the sister of Moses. She was a hero. She was like one of the saints that all of the New Testament people looked up to as a saint. There was others too, like Sarah and Hannah and Judith and so on. So this is a very popular name, and a lot of people had that name. Just like Peter today, you get so many guys named Peter. Or there's some certain names that are very similar. So it says here that you have Mary Magdalene. You have Mary, the mother of James and Joseph. That's a different Mary. And then you have the mother of the sons of Zebedee. Her name is Salome. So you have Mary, the wife of Clopas. And each one explains them a little bit different. And almost one of them at the John, it says at the cross of Jesus were his mother and his mother's sister. And that's a different one that people aren't used to. Mary's sister was there. It was Jesus' mother and his mother's sister, right. Mary, the wife of Clopas, and Mary Magdalene. So you have, it was a very popular name, obviously.
Okay, so I think I've got that straight. Is help me, Steve. Is Mary's sister is not named Mary, though? There's like a comma in there. Or is she named Mary?
Some there's flip a coin. If you look at what scholars have said, some think that her name was also Mary, but then some think it's at the foot of the cross were his mother, comma, his mother's sister, comma, Mary the wife of Clopas, comma, and Mary Magdalene. Others think it just says by standing at the cross, Jesus were his mother's sister, Mary the wife of Clopas, and Mary Magdalene. I think it's not another. I think it's his mother's sister, and then Mary of Clopas is another one. That's my opinion.
I got you.
Now that everyone's thoroughly confused, let's go to the last one. Now, what I did is I sent you 5 pages. I sent you 6 pages that I have printed out of all of these people or entities. I have to say entities too, because I throw the temple in there. I throw God the Father and the Holy Spirit in there, and nature. Nature rebels. Nature is there. And when it sees its own creator, the creation was made through him and by him. And nature just, I think, rebels that day. And the sun is hidden and the rocks crack and there's an earthquake. So I say that nature's there too. But I think maybe my favorite one, and partly because of a painting by Rembrandt, you and I are at the foot of the cross. You and I are, when Jesus looks out at what's in the view around him, he sees all these different people. But because he's God, yes, he's a man dying there in his human nature, but he's also God, and he has the ability to think of every one of us simultaneously at the same time. And so we were there too. And he says, I'm doing this for you, Si, as he looks down at the cross, from the cross. I'm doing this for you, Steve. But Rembrandt, people should get, after the show, not now, but go on Google and look up Rembrandt, Raising of the Cross. I think it may be my all-time favorite painting in the world. It's got a picture, it's kind of dark. Jesus is on the cross at about a little more than a 45-degree angle. They're raising him up, and he's almost going to be vertical soon. And you notice as there's one soldier just pulling so hard, there's another guy, and the light seems to be on his face a lot, and he's wearing a funny hat because it's a painter's beret from Holland, a Dutch painter's beret. And it's a self-portrait of Rembrandt. And Rembrandt is the one with the soldier pulling the cross up with Jesus on it. And what is he saying? I'm the one who raised Jesus on the cross. Yeah. It wasn't the Jews and the Romans. It was me who raised the cross. That is so beautiful. And then if you look, there's the centurion right behind him, and he's handing you something. And if you look carefully, he's handing you either the sword or the lance. But he's not handing it to you. He's handing you the handle. He's holding the blade, and he's handing you the handle. And he's saying, here, you put him on the cross, you stab him.
Yeah, it reminds me of Mel Gibson. I heard that Gibson did that in his movie, The Passion of the Christ, that the hands of the person that nails Jesus to the cross are Gibson's own hands.
I've heard that too, and I believe it because he's an artist, and he would do something like that because he understands the symbolism of that. And someday in glory, on Judgment Day, he's going to say, Lord, I realize I'm the one that put you. Remember, my hands were on that cross that pulled you up there. But you and I were at the foot of the cross, and I think of all of the ones we're going to discuss today, that's the most important one, that you and I there, because we're going to have to acknowledge what he did for us and how he took our sins away, and he's paying for them there at that moment.
Steve Ray is our guest. The people at the foot of the cross is our topic. Our first guest, our first caller, Abby from Houston, Texas, listening on the Catholic Answers Live app. Abby, thank you for downloading the app onto your phone. Your question for Steve.
Hi, I'm 13 and a cradle Catholic, but I always had this question. Why did God send his son to die and then send an earthquake when Jesus actually died? He was the one who sent him. Why did he get mad?
That's a great question, Abby. I like that. You're 13 years old. I have grandchildren your age, and I love them, and I love because they're so inquisitive and they have these great questions. Well, let me see if I can answer it. Just because God sent his son down to die doesn't mean he's happy about it. In a one way, I think he is, because this is the way that he can show us how much he really loved us. It's his great demonstration of his love. He's showing all of us, sinners and saints, the devil and all the evil spirits, all of the holy angels in heaven, and even nature and the whole universe. Look how much I love Abby. This is it. This is my crowning moment. I'm so happy that I get to show Abby how much I love her. But at the same time, he's not happy about the fact that sin is there and what sin is doing to his son. And so the earthquake came, but as I think a reaction to that. But I think, Abby, maybe the number one reason is with that earthquake when that came and the sun was blotted out. It said that the soldiers saw that, and they believed and said, this surely is the Son of God. The two thieves on the cross were both reviling and cursing at Jesus. But I think when that earthquake came, the good thief had a conversion. As a result of that earthquake and the sun being blotted out, many people converted because they saw this as a miracle. This isn't just your average robber or thief on the cross. This must have been somebody special if even God's going to make an earthquake come and the sun stop shining. And so I think he was happy that his son was there because it was showing his love. It was a good thing. It was a bad thing because sin had done such evil to the world that he was showing how bad that evil really was, that it even took the death of his son. And he wasn't happy about that. I'm sure even Jesus said, Father, Father, why have you forsaken me? He felt the alienation there, Jesus, the man, did. But I think a lot of it had to do with, because of that earthquake and the sun, a lot of people converted that day. Does that help, Benny?
Yeah. Abby.
Yes, that makes a lot of sense. Thank you.
You're welcome, Abby.
Keep
asking good questions, Abby, and stay faithful to the Lord and stay being a Catholic all your whole life.
Thank you.
Thank you, Abby. 888-318-7884, our number. Steve Ray is here. He has many times been to the very place where the cross once stood. He's taken, I don't know, maybe tens of thousands of people to the Holy Land. How many people? Have you ever thought about that? How many people you've taken?
I have no idea. I know that I've been there almost 200 times now, something like that. Wow. And we've taken, every time we go, we don't take huge groups because it's too impersonal. You feel like a cow in a herd. So we take either one bus or two buses. And so, but you multiply that out by 15 years, 7 trips a year, 1-2 buses, it adds up to a lot of people. Everywhere I go, I have groups of people that come up. I went with you on this date. I went with you on this date. Oh, what a life-changing thing. It's a real joy. What a joy.
All right, up next is Jordan in New Jersey. Jordan, your question for Steve Ray.
My question is, did the Jews bring in Jesus and did the Romans kill him?
I missed the first part. Did the Jews what to Jesus?
Yes. Did the Jews kill him and did the Romans bring him in?
It was a combination because the Romans would have done nothing. They did not want any trouble. They wanted to just leave it alone. And Pilate wanted to let's whip him and let him go. We don't want to make trouble because, see, during Passover, there are some estimates that as many as 2 million people came into Jerusalem. A fraction of that on a normal day, but because the Jews came from all over the world to come to Passover, some estimates are they'd have 2 million people. And so Pilate wanted to keep no trouble, no riots, keep it down. But the Jews were the one that insisted that he be killed because they said, He's teaching against Moses and against the law and against the temple. And if we let him keep doing this, the Romans are going to come and take our temple away and we're going to lose all of our privileges. So we got to get rid of this guy. It was a political move on their part against Jesus. They had to get rid of him or they're afraid the Romans were going to take their temple away and come storming into Israel and take over and be brutal. So the Jews wanted to get rid of Jesus, but they couldn't kill him. It was against the law for the Jews to do capital punishment and kill. So they had to take him to the Romans. And the Romans did have the authority to kill, and they finally convinced Pilate to kill him. So the Jews were saying, crucify him. We're going to put our pressure on you. And they pushed and pushed until finally Pilate, the Roman, said, okay, we'll do it. And the Romans actually took Jesus out. It was the Roman soldiers that made him carry the cross, and it was the Roman soldiers that crucified him. But the Jews were there contributing and shouting and making sure they actually went through with the execution. But actually,
you can hear
it was us that put him there.
Jordan, thank you very, very much for the question. We're talking about the people at the foot of the cross. Your calls are welcome.
888-318-7884. Your number one source for Catholic apologetics and evangelization, Catholic Answers Live. Did you know you can access Catholic Answers Live right from your phone or other mobile device? Download the Catholic Answers Live app today. The Catholic Answers Live app, available now on iOS and Android.
Have you subscribed to the Catholic Answers Radio Club newsletter? This is Catholic Answers Live host Cy Kellett, and I want to tell you about our new weekly newsletter full of behind-the-scenes information and facts you need to know about the show. It's easy to sign up. Just visit CatholicAnswersLive.com and look for the newsletter sign-up box on the front of the page. It's a great way to keep up to date with what's happening with the show and see what's coming in the days ahead, delivered weekly into your inbox. Sign up today for the Catholic Answers Radio Club newsletter and see what you've been missing. Go to CatholicAnswersLive.com.
Many Catholics ignore the Bible. They say they have the church instead. But we should embrace sacred scripture, not just as the revealed Word of God, but as a Catholic work, intimately connected with the church from the earliest centuries. In The Bible is a Catholic Book, apologist Jimmy Akin shows how the Bible cannot exist apart from the church, in its origins, in the truths it contains, in its careful preservation over the centuries. Scripture is inseparable from the Catholic faith. This is fitting, since both come from God for our salvation. If you're a Catholic who sometimes gets intimidated by the Bible is a Catholic Book will help you better understand and take pride in this gift that God gave the world through the church. After all, Catholics are the original Bible Christians. Order your copy of The Bible is a Catholic Book today by calling 1-844-239-4952, visiting shop.catholic.com, or asking for it at a good Catholic bookstore near you.
Having to stay inside all day has led some to play video games with their free time.
But how much is too much?
Let's discuss tomorrow on Take Two with Jerry and Debbie.
Now back to Catholic Answers Live.
Welcome back to Catholic Answers Live. I'm Cy Kellett, your host. Our guest is Steve Ray, and we're talking about the people at the foot of the cross. Steve has put together a really magnificent collection of those who are at the foot of the cross. Jordan, who just called, asked an interesting question about the role of the Jews and the Romans in the execution of Jesus. And it provides an opportunity to say that, especially in St. John's Gospel, the phrase the Jews, it means the particular Jewish authorities. I mean, clearly, John himself is a Jew. He's not talking about about Peter, and he's not talking about Mary, and he's not talking about Jesus, all of whom were Jews. So it's almost as if to say the Jewish authorities. But I say
right.
that. Go ahead, Steve.
Well, I agree, because I don't want anybody to get the idea that we think that the Jews killed Jesus. That's certainly not the case. It was the Jewish leaders who were protecting their privileges. They were protecting their political privileges. Jesus was a Jew. Mary was a Jew. All the apostles were Jews. The Jewish people did not crucify Jesus. The Jewish leadership at the time that was protecting their prerogatives and their political position, they are the ones who did it. And in effect, in a way, you could even say they lost their Jewishness when they did it, because they were actually denying the books of the Old Testament, and they were complicit with the Romans. They were actually forming a partnership with the Romans in a lot of things that they did, the leadership, especially the Sadducees. So make that a clear point, absolutely.
And Caiaphas himself says why they're doing it, because if we don't do this, the Romans are going to come in our land. That's what he says.
Yep.
So I make note of that in part because I think as Christians we have an obligation to do that, especially given the last century of persecution of Jews, not by Christians, but.
And I'll say that I love the Jewish people. I love going to Israel. I love being with them. And I always hoped that maybe someday I'd find out I had Jewish blood in me. I just wanted to think that even a little bit of Abraham's blood going through me. And when we did our 23andMe genealogical test, I'm 99% European, but I have 0.6% Jewish. And I could not have been happier.
You did it, Steve. Congratulations.
I did.
Well, I know. Among the groups then that you have at the foot of the cross of Jesus, you have a group that you refer to as taunting Jews, which is clearly there, and then you have believing Jews and acquaintances. So why don't you talk about those two groups real quick?
Well, you have two groups. Some believe that Jesus was the Messiah, and some were in favor of him simply because he had healed Grandma. He had, delivered Uncle Festus from the plague, and he'd healed Grandpa from leprosy. Because some of these people, they loved him and were faithful to him, believed in him simply because of the miracles that he had done, and maybe for them personally. Many of them believed, and they were beating their breasts, that they were so dismayed about his death. But then you have others that are mocking him and taunting him. Among them, the two thieves. In Matthew 28, it says both thieves were reviling Jesus and cursing him and giving him a hard time. Both of them. But only after a time did the good thief decide to have a conversion. I think that St. Jerome says that it was the sun going dark and the earthquake when the thief saw that. He had a conversion, and I think that when his heart opened, God gave him a revelation. Because think of this thief on the cross. You're next to a guy who's been beaten bloody. He looks like a hamburger meat, raw hamburger. He's so bloody and beaten up, and he's dying, and his face is mashed. And you say to him, "Remember me when you enter your kingdom." What kind of kingdom? I mean, what crazy way to... I mean, this guy does not look like a man who's going to enter into a kingdom. He's going to enter into the ground, and worms are going to eat him. And this thief, though, he saw something. I think God gave him, he just gave God just an inch. I like what Father Chris Alar says, that at the end of our lives, God always comes and meets us and gives us a chance. When he talks about his book, Suicide, Father Chris Alar with the Marians. And I think that's the case. And this man must have just given a crack, and God flushed into there with all this light and said to him, "Believe on this." And the guy says, "Man, now I see who he is." It had to be a revelation from God, because nobody looks at a man dying on a cross and said, "This is a king going into his kingdom." And so you have the good thief who did it. And why is there a good thief on one side and a bad thief on the other? Well, they're both bad thieves. Oh, here's a good joke that we use when we're guiding people. How do we know that he was a good thief? Because he stole eternal life at the last minute. Anyway, that's a bad joke. But you have one on either side, and I think that God did it that way to show you all of humanity in a nutshell. All of us are either on one side of Christ or on the other. We're either believers who are asking him to take us into the kingdom, acknowledging our own guilt and his righteousness, or we're the bad thief who just reviles and curses and goes on his way. Everybody listening is one of those two. And I think that's why he puts them in the middle like that.
It's fascinating that it doesn't matter what you've done, you get to choose at any moment which of those two you're going to be too. Like they had all up to that. Their biographies are exactly the same up to that point. That's
exactly right.
Yep. Up next is Marta in Miami, Florida, listening on the Catholic Answers Live app. Marta, thank you for downloading the app onto your phone. Your question for Steve Ray.
Okay, so we were meditating about the baptism this past week. And something that caught my attention is like if you see Padre Pio's stigmatas and also like all the pictures about Jesus is on the palm of the hand where the nail was. But also like if you start reading, it says that it was in the wrist. So I want to know what you think about it.
Very good question, Marta. Thank you for calling. I think I think we get too legalistic or too. Can't think of the word right off, but the hand, when it says it went into his hand, that's the whole thing at the end of your arm. And if you feel if you put a nail right in the center of your hand, the palm, so to speak, and put a lot of weight on it, just feel with your fingers on pinching on either side, the nail would slide right between your fingers and out because there's no bones or gristle or sinew to hold that nail in. But if you move down to the bottom of your palm, still in the palm of your hand, but you can feel there's a bunch of different bones. And I just wrote an email to a guy 10 minutes before the show started because people ask me that a lot. But if you, in the palm of your hand, at the lower part of the palm, if you put your finger in there, there's a whole bunch of bones in there. And if you put the nail in that part, it's still in the palm of your hand. It's just the lower part of the palm. I'm not talking about the wrist where your wristwatch goes, but the lower part of your palm, if you follow your thumb right down, boom, right to that point. That's where I think the nails were, because if you pounded the nail in there and you put a lot of weight, it would still hold the nail. But the Romans were also smart because they knew there was a nerve there called the median nerve, which is one of the most painful nerves. I'm not a doctor. I've learned this by reading. But one of the most painful nerves in the whole body, and even during World War II, morphine did not cut the pain of that median nerve. So the Romans wanted it to be as painful, as gruesome, as degrading, as dehumanizing, and painful as they could. So they knew right where to put that nail, right there at the base of the palm, not the wrist, but in the palm, right where your thumb points in a way. And not only would they stay on the cross with that, but it would also send the most excruciating pain through their whole bodies. And the way I do it, by the way, on my website too, I have 2 DVDs in my conversion story on sale, but one is called The Stations of the Cross, where I go through each one of them describing it. And then the second CD is The Pain of the Crucifixion, where I go into great detail about these kind of facts. But the Romans knew what it was, and I call it a symphony of pain. He was experiencing a symphony of pain, like every musical instrument, every corner of his body, the pain was just reeking up into his brain. And it was a horrible thing. But that's how I explain the nail in the hand. I hope that helps.
Does that help you, Maria?
Thank you, Steve.
You're welcome, Marta. Thank you.
Oh, that was Marta. All right, Marta, thank you. Let's go to Timothy in Kerrville, Texas, watching on Facebook Live. Timothy, your question for Steve Ray.
Hello, Steve. I'm a big fan. Just wanted to let you know that of you.
Thank you.
But my question was, Barnabas in his epistle, I have it, and I couldn't find where at in the chapter where he, Jesus on the cross, I guess with his arms wide, and reminding him of Moses when he was on the hill to prevent one of the wars. And
the Amalekites.
I wanted to know, okay, was Barnabas an eyewitness to Jesus Christ on the cross? Do we hold that in our history? I don't know the answer. But, yeah.
Well, let me tell first that is a story in the Old Testament of they were fighting the Israelites were fighting the Amalekites, who represent the devil and sin in the world. And Moses, as long as he held his two arms up with his staff, the Israelites won. When his arms fell down, because he's so tired, then the Amalekites were winning. So he had Aaron and Hur, H-U-R, hold his hands up. It's like the cross, a man on each side, just like Jesus had a man on each side. So that's very good of you to think about that, Timothy. But the idea of Barnabas, we don't know. It doesn't tell us. What we do know is that Barnabas was a believer on the day of Pentecost, which is only 50 days from now, because Pentecost means the 50th day. 50th day from what? From the Passover lamb being slain. Jesus is the Passover lamb, and Pentecost is the 50th day after that. And we know that Barnabas was already there. His other name was Joseph. And Barnabas means encourager, one who encourages. So it's more like a nickname. His real name was Joseph. Barnabas means that one who is encouraging. He's a helpful, friendly guy. Everybody liked him. And he was there, and he sold his property and gave it to the apostles. So my guess is that he was probably there at the cross. He probably was watching, because he was already a believer and one who was probably there, but we don't know for sure.
Okay.
And I just wanted to know, is that Barnabas that baptized Paul?
We don't know. No, that was Ananias who baptized Paul. That was in Damascus many, many years later. But Barnabas was Paul's partner. And Barnabas and Paul worked together, but then they had a falling out. And it said they had a great contention between them, and they went their separate ways. But Barnabas did not baptize Paul. That was Ananias, who was up in Damascus at the time.
Thank you for the call. We're talking with Steve Ray about the people at the foot of the cross today. I don't want to finish this hour, Steve, without asking you about Adam's skull. So we'll do that when we come back. Adam's skull at the foot of the cross. If you have questions about the people at the foot of the cross, you're welcome to call 888-318-7884. 888-318-7884. And we've still got free ebook for you, 20 Answers Prayer. Visit shop.catholic.com today and look for the banner at the top of the page to download your free copy of 20 Answers Prayer.
Catholic Answers Live with Steve Ray. Today on Catholic Answers Live.
Underwriting for Catholic Answers Live is provided by Real Estate for Life. Real Estate for Life connects home buyers and sellers to real estate agents while supporting pro-life organizations. On the web at realestateforlife.org.
Do you want to end abortion, halt the attack on traditional marriage, and ensure religious freedom for ourselves and for our grandchildren? To do this, we must convert the culture. St. Paul's Street Evangelization is a grassroots initiative that recognizes this need and takes it to the streets. If you're interested in peacefully sharing the gospel in your area, visit streetevangelization.com to learn more.
Looking for a 2020 view on how Catholics are voting in the upcoming election? EWTN News and Real Clear Opinion Research are partnering to bring you clear and concise data on where the nation stands on issues, candidates, policies, and more by surveying Americans, including Catholics like you. And it's available now at EWTNnews.com/poll.
We've covered some of the folks who are at the foot of the cross of Jesus. That's our topic this hour with Steve Ray. Next hour, we've got a chaplain in for you. We've got a priest in for you. So if you have a question for a priest, it's Ask a Priest hour next hour with Father David McConey. And he's a wonder. You're going to really like talking with Father David McConey. So if you got a priest question, something about your prayer life, your family life, something that would be appropriate for a priest to answer. And it doesn't have to be a pastoral thing. If it's a theological question that you'd like help with from a priest, something in the moral life, next hour is for you. This hour, we're talking about all those folks at the foot of the cross, and we've hit quite a few of them. But tell me about this tradition of painting Christ on the cross and there's a skull on the ground in front of him, Steve.
Yeah, people don't notice that, but if you look at icons, especially of the crucifixion, you'll notice in many of them there is a skull at the base of the cross, and that is Adam's skull. And at the Church of the Holy Sepulchre, there is a disc in the floor, by the way, that says in Armenian, this is where the holy women stood to watch Jesus from that point. But there's also a chapel under Calvary, which is like a huge rock, and you go down at the base of that, and that chapel has always been called the Chapel of Adam. And there's an icon there with Jesus on the cross and the skull of Adam below. Why? Because there's a pious tradition. I don't think that there's credibility to it, I mean in reality, but it is a pious tradition, almost like a typology or a prefiguring, that Adam was buried there, and that when he, the first Adam, was at a tree of life and brought about death to all of mankind in a garden, we know that Jesus in 1 Corinthians 15 is called the new Adam or the second Adam, and he is also in a garden. John tells us that the cross was in a garden. Twice he tells us that. He wants us to know that so that we parallel what's happening with him on the cross with another garden, with the prototypical Garden of Eden. These two are parallels to each other. The first Adam at a tree of life brought about death, and he was naked in his innocence in the garden and was kicked out of the garden clothed. The new Adam now enters a new garden. He comes in clothed, but he's stripped naked to restore the innocence of the first Adam. And at the tree of death, he brings about life. And the blood of the second Adam falls down onto the skull of the first Adam and redeems him. That's why that skull is there. And one of my favorite paintings is in a church called the Choral Church in Istanbul. I take my groups there when we go, and I love to see this. And in that chapel, there's a painting of Jesus pulling Adam and Eve out of their tombs on resurrection morning. He's got them both, and he's pulling them up. And Eve has her right hand covered with a red cloth because she's embarrassed that was the hand that reached out to pick the fruit. But if you want to know their feast day, it's Saint Adam and Saint Eve, and their feast day is Christmas Eve.
That's why it's so much fun to have Steve Ray on. 888-318-7884, the number. John in Denver, Colorado, you're next. John's listening on 1060 AM. Your question, John, for Steve Ray.
Oh, Steve, when Jesus was scourged when Jesus was scourged at the pillar, we have two ways of thinking about that. The Shroud of Turin says the ends of the whip were lead balls. Mel Gibson's movie says it was like a little piece of iron that tore into his flesh. I'm saying they can't both be true. And I'm with the Shroud of Turin. What do you say?
Well, I would have to say the Shroud of Turin too. They were both wicked, and they both would rip the flesh because they were small enough. If you beat someone with rods, it's like hitting them with a garden hose. It bruises and it breaks up the muscles and everything inside, but it doesn't make you bloody. Whereas a flagellum, the kind they had, would rip the skin and leave you a bloody mess. And there was no OSHA requirements, no manufacturing requirements for how these whips were made. What would happen is the Roman soldiers would sit around the campfire at night and they would make these whips, and they would say, mine's going to be more cruel than yours. Oh, no, yours isn't. Wait till you watch this thing rip the flesh off of the next guy we get. And they would make their flagellums to be as gruesome as they could. But I agree with you on the fact that the whips, the Shroud of Turin, I've seen it twice, the real one, when I took groups there when they came out the last two times. And that does show that there were like little barbells tied into those whips. That would be devastating. And that's what it shows on the skin of Jesus, on the shroud. And if I had to be a betting man, I would say that's the way those whips were made. I agree with you, John.
Right. Thank you, Steve. God bless you, buddy. Thanks for being around.
But one thing, too, is we remember when Jesus was whipped like that, those, if they were whipping your buttocks, for example, and they would, because you were scarred from the top, from your neck all the way down to your ankles. They didn't just spank you on the butt like a parent does. They were whipping his back and his buttocks and the back of his legs. And those pieces of metal or whatever was in those would wrap around the leg and it would embed itself. When they jerked that whip back, everybody standing around would be splattered with blood and pieces of flesh. These guys were brutal. And these whips were brutal. They made the worst possible whips they could because that was the whole purpose, to make this the most painful thing, to be the example to everybody. What the Romans wanted to say is, if you defy the laws of Rome, if you defy us, even if you look at us wrong, this is what's going to happen to you. That's why they hung them in the city gates outside the city of Jerusalem. Every day there were people out there like that. This is what you saw when you took your grandkids to go see Grandma and Grandpa. You'd see these people hanging, and then your kids would grow up, I'm never going to disobey Rome. But just think of the audacity of Jesus. It took a lot of chutzpah for him to say to his disciples, unless you are willing to carry your own cross like this, unless you pick up your own cross and carry it and die on, you're not worthy to be my disciple. Just think, if I was going to start a club, and I said, everybody on the air today, I'm going to start a club, and but in order to be this, you have to be willing to carry a cross, be whipped and scourged, and die hanging on a cross, they kept people alive on the cross for up to 10 days. Jesus, only 3 hours. Can you imagine 10 days on a cross? And you are not going to be even worthy to be my disciple unless you're willing to go through that. That's what it means to be a disciple of Jesus Christ. And maybe why John, he has so few true ones.
Yep, Steve.
Yeah, indeed. Right. Thanks, John. I'm with both of you. I'm going with the Shroud of Turin. I mean, come on. Joan in Virginia, listening on Channel 130, EWTN on Sirius XM satellite radio. Joan, your question for Steve Ray.
Yes, thank you. I was just wondering about the custom, whether it was customary for family members, loved ones, to be able to stand at the foot of the cross, or of any crucifixion, or was that a special privilege given to the Blessed Mother and those with her?
I don't think there was any special privileges given. The Romans didn't care about Mary. They didn't care about the disciples. They were there to get a job done, and they were going to get it done before the first star shone in the sky, because that was evening, and they had to have them all dead and killed and off the crosses and buried before Passover started with the first star. So there was I don't think there was any customs of that. The whole purpose of taking someone out and crucifying them like that was to make a show. And normally there would be no one there, because if you were a robber or you were a criminal and they took you out and they crucified you, the last thing you'd want to do, whether you were a parent or anybody else, is be anywhere near that man, because then you would be implicated with him. They would say, look, there's his mom and dad. They're the ones they taught. There's this, and all of a sudden you would then be questioned. So my guess is that most crucifixions, there was nobody there from the family. Nobody was around. And in this case, it was different because of who this man was. And like I said, there were some that were reviling Jews, and there were some believing Jews that were there. And the holy women, it says, came, and they followed Jesus on the stations of the cross. And Mary was among those holy women, and John came. The other men all ran away. By the way, this is a great moment for women, because men all got cowardly and turned around and ran. And I know that I've been married to a woman for 43 years, and I've learned something about these creatures called women. They are very noble. And when men fail in their responsibilities and they run, women will always step in and fill the gap. And these women came no matter what happened, because they loved Jesus. They knew who he was. Mary came because she obviously knew who he was, and she was there in a way to offer him. But I think under normal circumstances, nobody, friend or family, would be anywhere near that guy being crucified, because they didn't want to get involved in being implicated with him.
What do you think, Joan?
That's exactly what I was thinking. So I appreciate having it confirmed. Thank you so much.
You're welcome.
Thank you, John.
I love watching Blue Bloods. It's a good Catholic cop show in New York, very Catholic. And you see all the time, when there's a crime scene, they put up the yellow tape, get back, and if you come in, they'll push you back. And I think it was the same with the Romans. When they were crucifying Jesus, they were telling everybody to get back. We got our job to do. We're in a hurry, and they're nailing him and pushing people out of the way. But after that was over, they were over on the side. They were casting lots for his garments and his clothes, and then Mary and John could come up closer.
So you think that I'm thinking if Peter and Andrew and all these other fishermen try to come up, this is a tough looking crowd, and the Romans wouldn't put up with it. But if it was women and a young man like John, they would probably put up with it.
I see John as like a 15-year-old young whippersnapper. He lived an old man too. He didn't die till around 100 AD or later, and so he was a young man, and he would be less of a threat. The men had already ran. We don't have any indication that they were there at the crucifixion to see that. They may have been at a distance, but we don't have anywhere where it says, and John and Andrew and Peter were all. Peter and Andrew and the others were standing at a distance. We don't know that. It says they were witnesses to the resurrection. It never says they were witnesses to the crucifixion, and so the women. Those guys would be there. They would say, "Those are his. Grab them too."
Right. Exactly. Yes.
Not want to be anywhere near. And so, they weren't real disciples because they weren't willing to carry the cross with them.
Steve, where can people find you if they want to find out more, get more of your writing, maybe travel with you? Where can they go?
CatholicConvert.com, and I have some of these CDs up there right now if you want to get them at a good price. And happy Easter, everyone! And even though it's strange, God bless you all this crazy Easter.
Indeed. Steve, it's always great. Thank you so much. Appreciate you doing it. Go to CatholicConvert.com if you want to know more about what Steve is up to. And before long, he'll be the first guy back on the airplane. You can count on that if you can go back to the Holy Land. Up next, Father David McConey with us. Ask a Priest. If you've got a question for a priest, 888-318-7884. Hello and welcome back to Catholic Answers Live. I am Cy Kellett, your host. And this hour, ask a priest. If you have a question that's of a nature that is appropriate for a priest, you're welcome to call and ask your question. 888-318-7884 is the number. Maybe it's a family thing. Maybe it's something to do with your marital status or your prayer life, or maybe you have a question about the faith, a question that's about theology or doctrine or whatever you like. You are welcome to call 888-318-7884. We all probably feeling like we need a priest. At the very least, we need a priest to celebrate Mass for us. We haven't been there for a long time, and I know that we're all feeling the loss of that. But we can't do that for you right now. But we can share with you, Father David McConey. Father, how are you?
Oh, fine. Thanks. Thanks for having me back.
Well, thank you for being with us. You are responsible for what is still remembered by many people as the funniest hour ever of Catholic Answers Live with you and Monsignor Morris together.
Monsignor Morris, yeah.
So
I just found out today we're going to be celebrating a wedding in January. I hope that goes okay. But
oh man. Does the couple know? I have some tape I want to send them of Catholic Answers conference a year and a half ago. Yes. So, Father, for you as a priest, are you celebrating private masses?
That's all we're allowed to do, which feels
okay.
Yeah, it feels funny, and I got to admit, it feels a bit clerical that we're the only ones being able to receive Eucharist right now. But I guess the concerns are real, and this is the safest thing. I do wish we could have thought maybe a little more creatively. Some Jesuit friends of mine in Germany are celebrating masses out in parking lots and then distributing Holy Communion with tongs on a platter that goes into the car and then is purified accordingly afterwards and then disposed of. So there are ways of doing this. We just haven't thought very well about it here in the States, I don't think.
Well, that's right. I had wondered about that. You know what? That's funny because here on Catholic Answers Live, some people were asking the other day about, I don't know if you remember Reverend Robert Schuller, but he used to do drive-in. He was a Protestant minister, but he used to do drive-in, like at a drive-in movie theater. Yeah, Crystal Cathedral, right. And
well, there are priests hearing confessions in parking lots. I call that shrive-in, but that's another.
Shrive, of course. To be shriven is to receive your penance, right? So
that's an old English term, yeah.
Yes. That shrive-in confessions, very good. Well, so what would see? This is how I think of you, because I know you have books and things on Saint Augustine of Hippo. What might he say in a moment like this? So what would be the wisdom of Saint Augustine?
Actually never. I did check. He never did live through a plague, and he never knew anything quite like this. But these are very unusual times, and I think the biggest fear, I think, is the ambiguity of not knowing exactly what the future holds, and maybe that's the honest admittance of our Christian lives, that our lives really aren't really in our hands ultimately. So a sense of surrender, a sense of trust. But boy, that's hard to do without the daily sacraments, especially for the faithful who are so used to receiving them every day.
Yeah, that's right. Yeah. So do you what are you advising people to do? Like people say, I don't know. I mean, we've been talking here about spiritual communion. I don't know if that's something you recommend, or maybe reading the Liturgy of the Hours, or
sure, right. There's many ways. I mean, daily rosary, getting back into kind of maybe a quieter, contemplative period of the day when things are shutting down so much. If people can get to their local church, if the doors are open to make a holy hour if they can, or I know parishes have certain rules, maybe only 10 at a time, so maybe 15 minutes to let others in. There's confessions available still for many parts. I know not in all dioceses. So there are things to do. Liturgy of the Hours, the Magnificat is a great resource, the Rosary, of course. So nothing is inevitably all lost, right? There's always something we can do.
Right, that's right, and God takes care of us in these times. He's not wagging his finger. None of you have made it to Mass, so there will be no graces for any of you. Father, we have lots and lots of folks on the line for you. Would you like to take some calls?
If they're friendly to Jesuits, sure.
Now, see, I didn't say Jesuit right at the beginning. I was protecting you. Maybe I did. I don't know if I said it or not. But Yes, I you know, my father's cousin was a Jesuit. I was educated by Jesuits, so I have none of that. What is it? Au courant Jesuit distaste, and not a bit of it. So,
all right, let's get to the calls.
All right, Sarah in Texas, listening on her Alexa. Sarah, your question for Father McConey.
Yes, Father McCombs.
Hi, Sarah.
Thank you for taking my call. Hi. We just purchased our first home. So as we were getting things settled, I purchased my first home altar kit. And because of COVID-19, I had originally wanted them to be blessed, as well as my candles that I purchased from a local grocery store. I've been looking online, and there's people who say, you need to be careful. Sometimes people do witchcraft on their candles, yada, yada, yada. So I just wanted to know, to provide some type of prayer or a way that I can bless these candles, since my local church is completely closed. Right?
It's completely closed.
Even asked to drop it off at the church and to have them blessed. So I'm just hoping there's some type of, I don't know if it's just an Our Father, or I just don't want to be incorrect. I'm coming from.
So you're, wait, if I may, before Father answers this, so they have they have the candles at the grocery store. For example, we have a lot of Our Lady of Guadalupe candles. That you're saying people do witchcraft on those, like put a curse on them or something in the store?
Yeah, that's what I've heard. That's what I've researched online. Of course, it's a rabbit hole and you can just get lost. But
yeah, no, but I never would have thought of it. But I guess if you were inclined to do such things, that would be the place to do it. So, Father, what can she do to kind of sanctify her candles?
This is wherever there's strong Catholic symbols, chances are it's Catholic, and that's what people go after. And so I could imagine somebody who's not quite all there doing that kind of thing in a grocery store before you purchase them. But one, I wouldn't worry too much about that, because I think the Lord obviously is looking out for you, and if you purchase these for the right intention, He will bless them. Now, to have them officially blessed, I would say, sure, I would pray over whatever you bought. There are blessings for candles that is usually reserved for a priest or a deacon, but I think there's no harm in your praying that prayer, and then when all of this lifts, to bring your kit and your candles to the parish and have it blessed with holy water and in the proper form. I don't think there's a rush on this, and I don't think this should inhibit you from using these devotionals, these sacramentals now.
Okay.
Yeah.
Okay, Sarah?
But thanks for your concern, Sarah.
Thank you.
Hey, congratulations on the new home. There's a home blessing, too, and I think once we get back to normal, you should have your priest over to bless your house.
Yes, sir. That's on the list.
Good. Blessings. Be safe.
Well, God bless you, Sarah. Thank you. Next up is Lisa in Lawton, Oklahoma, listening on Oklahoma Catholic Radio. Hi, Lisa. Your question for Father.
Hi, Father. Thank you for taking my call. This is really complicated. My husband and I were married in 2001, and then various reasons, he left me just flat, totally abandoned me in 2012. So I've been wanting to become a member of a third order. Now, is that possible? Because I'm still basically attached to this man.
Right.
I mean, I call myself Jesus' spouse, and I don't know if I'm supposed to even be doing that. I know Jesus loved me from the first, and this guy couldn't love me for 12 years, so I don't understand. I don't know what direction to go in.
That's a wise distinction, and you're right. We're all ultimately the spouse of Christ, so thank God you own that and make that part of your spiritual life. I think that's rich and profound. And a third order, you're still married in the eyes of the church, and there are many third orders that receive married people, even if you were divorced. I mean, I don't think that's a hindrance at all, a prohibition to join a third order. It depends, I guess, which ones you go to and what they mean by third order, but usually third order is reserved for single people and married people. So do you have one in mind, like Dominicans or Franciscans, or what do you have there in Oklahoma?
I'm hoping for the Carmelites.
Carmelites, yeah. Well, I'd encourage you to go speak with them and explain your situation. It's unfortunate, but you didn't do anything wrong here. You've been dealt a bad hand, but I would hope any community with a kind of mercy and mature understanding of the complexities of married life would receive you with joy.
Yeah, that was the, I put the icing on the cake, but he was just waiting to leave me anyway. He just looking for an excuse.
Yeah, I'm sorry.
It's a painful situation, and God bless you as you continue. You're welcome to call back anytime as you encounter new questions on your journey, but it sounds like, at least for this question, you have the joy of a positive answer. You can explore the participation in a religious order, in a third order, and thank you very much for your call. Right now, joining us before we head off to our break is the president of Catholic Answers, Chris Check. Hi, Chris Check.
Father McConey, and Cy also. It's a joy to be with both of you. Father, I'm very sorry that things turned out, and I don't know if our listeners probably would not know, but Father McConey was scheduled to come out here last month to give the staff retreat for Catholic Answers staff and also do a couple of public lectures here in San Diego. So all that is on hold until...
we will reschedule.
Yeah, absolutely. Absolutely. We look forward to having you out here.
Thank you. Thank you.
But Chris, you're doing you are caught up in some kind of a scheme to educate and delight people while they're stuck in their homes. So
I think it's distract them with verbal legerdemain. That's really what it is. So here's what happens. I got a phone call, an email about a week or so ago from William Fahey, who is the president of Thomas More College in Liberal Arts in New Hampshire. And there's a gang of us who meet once a year in Fort Scott, Kansas, actually, not too far away from where Father McConey is, other side of the state, I guess. And then it's called the Prairie Troubadour, and it spins around a great boys' school, Catholic boys' school, St. Martin's Academy, run by another friend of mine named Dan Kerr. And also in this group is Joseph Pierce and Dale Alquist, president of the American Chesterton Society. So we decided what the world needs now is some education, yes, but also some mirth. And so we are going to do for the next 5 Tuesdays with the Troubadours. And it's to give us a shot of battle joy in these confused times. And we're calling the series The Triumph of the Heart in a Time of Pestilence. So each of us is going to take a Tuesday. The first one is tomorrow at 8 Central, 8 Eastern, right? And 7 Central. And to register, everyone needs to go to chesterton.org, and scroll down a little bit. It's completely free. And I think we have something like 1,500 people signed up already, Cy.
That is so cool. So, who goes tomorrow? You said who starts the?
I am the MC tomorrow, okay. but the actual speaker tomorrow is Dale Alquist. But all of the panelists, Dale, Joseph, William Fahey, and Daniel Kerr, and yours truly are on for all 5 weeks. So the format goes like this. It's a giant Zoom meeting or whatever, webinar, but with 5 panelists. And so Dale will speak for about 20 minutes, and then the panelists will ask some questions, and there'll be some fun banter, and then or delightful banter, and then we'll open up to questions from the viewing audience.
And say once again where people can go, because I think there's going to be a lot of people who want to do this. Maybe I would assume with you gentlemen who are involved, it'd be perfectly fine to get your teenager to watch with you and be uplifted intellectually and spiritually. Absolutely.
Teenagers welcome, of course, families. Chesterton.org. So I have to say thank you to Emily at the American Chesterton Society. She's done all the heavy lifting here, setting up the all the tech involved. But yes, go to chesterton.org. That is the website of the American Chesterton Society. Scroll down an inch or two and you'll see Tuesdays with Troubadours, and it gives the whole line up there. And this, as you know, most of these guys have been on the show. Joseph Pierce has been on the show. Dale's been on the show. I know Daniel Kerr has been on Focus at least. So we will have, we're going to have a great time. It's a joyful group of men, some good storytelling, a lot of mirth, good jokes, and of course, some edification. Look, C.S. Lewis gave a great talk back in 1939 at St. Mary the Virgin in Oxford. It's a very famous lecture. And he was talking to Oxford students at the time of the outbreak of the Second World War, and he said, learning goes on all the time. No matter what is going on, learning is going on. And so it's in the spirit of that we're doing this Tuesdays with the Troubadours, because we're not going to all curl up in the fetal position until this is all over. Nope, we're going to continue to live our faith, and a lot of our faith is learning and delight and companionship and joy and mirth, and that's what it's all about. So Chesterton.org tomorrow night.
Chesterton.org. Join the Troubadours. Chesterton.org. We'll take a quick break. We'll be right back with more of your questions for our friend and our priest, Father David McConey, right after this.
It's all about the truth. Catholic Answers Live.
Are you a coffee drinker? If so, you can now enjoy a coffee roasted to perfection by the Carmelite monks of Wyoming. Delicious Mystic Monk coffee is roasted and prepared by monks in a hidden cloistered monastery and is available in over 25 varieties. All Mystic Monk coffees are works of perfection and labors of love. For more information on how to purchase Mystic Monk coffee, visit mysticmonkcoffee.com. That's mysticmonkcoffee.com.
Underwriting for Catholic Answers Live is provided by Real Estate for Life. Real Estate for Life connects homebuyers and sellers to real estate agents while supporting pro-life organizations. On the web at realestateforlife.org.
Hi, this is Trent Horn from Catholic Answers, and a lot of people ask me, how do you pray? I like the ACTS formula, ACTS. First, we adore God, realize He's God, we are not. We're contrite, we ask Him to forgive us of our sins. We're thankful, we thank Him for the blessings and trials He's given us. And then we make supplications and ask Him for help in our own lives, doing all of this so we can grow closer to Him and spend eternity with Him.
Welcome back to Catholic Answers Live. Ask a Priest this hour, and Father David McConey is our guest, and we're delighted to have him, and I have a little note for him. Somebody sent this heartwarming note over. I have a granddaughter named Regan, who was born prematurely during Holy Week 7 years ago at 1 pound and 14 ounces. This very holy priest dropped everything, came to the NICU, and baptized her. It took hours, and he patiently waited. She is perfect and healthy, and we are so grateful that he was there for our family. Thanks, Father McConey. So I imagine there are, that you and your brother priest, there are many times when these things out of necessity happen, and you just... and you show such great patience, and nobody ever hears about it, so we're glad people get to hear about it this time.
Thank you. I remember that day like it was yesterday. She's 7 now. Wow.
Yeah, think of that, huh? 1 pound, 14 ounces. That is tiny little baby. And thank God she's with us.
Yeah. Yeah, God bless.
Let's go to Robert now in Mason, Ohio, listening on 9:10 a.m. Robert, your question for Father David McConey.
Good evening, gentlemen.
Hello, Robert.
Father, my question concerns our times where we're kind of restricted from Mass and such. There was an interesting question brought up a few years ago, is like during Mass, if Father wants to, as he's consecrating the host, if there was a bowl of host like off on the side table where they keep the water and such for the washing of the hands, would that be consecrated too? And the answer was that the priest could consecrate anything he wanted to, or anything he meant to. So my question is, why couldn't, if we were watching Mass on the TV, could we have bread and wine, and could he consecrate that?
Well, let me tell you a story. This week, let me tell you a story. That one of my Jesuit friends this week, he got a phone call from some friends of his, and there's a mom who teaches nursing here at St. Louis University, and during Mass they were kneeling down during the consecration, watching it on TV. When it came time for Holy Communion, the mom looked up, and her 3 or 4-year-old daughter had gone into the kitchen and got the Irish soda loaf bread and was breaking it off, giving it to her other siblings. So there's something very religious and naturally devotional about sharing that kind of food together, and I think that's an insight into the Last Supper of our Lord. But the truth of the Christian story is that God became physically present to us. And so the consecration over the phone, over the television, I mean, it just can't be that the Lord has to. This is why we can't hear confessions over the phone. This is why we can't receive communion over a 3D printer or something. We have to be in the physical presence of the incarnation. That's precisely why God became physically and visibly real. So he would limit himself and thereby allow himself to be touched and met by us finite creatures. So I don't think it works. Even the bread off to the side of the table, traditionally the bread has to be on the altar. This isn't a magic kind of formula. The priest has to celebrate the Mass the way the Church intends, which means brings the elements to be consecrated onto the altar, the wine and the bread. So there's a natural, I want to affirm a natural kind of desire to have that kind of communion physically and tangibly with bread, but it would only work. It does only work in the presence of the sacrifice of the Mass and the priest's words.
How's that, Robert?
Right. That is perfect. Thank you very much.
And Robert, if I can say to anybody listening, my prayer every day is that the hunger and the distance being created now only revives Eucharistic devotion and perhaps daily Mass for those who finally are starting to understand the importance of being gathered around the visible, physical, real presence of our Lord. So let's all pray for that the Church experiences revival through this distance.
Amen. Amen to that. And I wonder, too, if another ancillary benefit of this is that there are some people who are experiencing the Mass who wouldn't otherwise, because there's just this flowering of Masses on every kind of media. And if, one member of the family has it on in the home, then other people may find themselves hearing the gospel read or hearing the preaching or watching and wondering at the consecration. There may be benefits to this that permeate out for a long time. We can hope for that too, I suppose.
Yeah, let's pray. Good point.
888-318-7884, the number if you have a question that you would like to ask a priest. By the way, you don't have to be Catholic to call. Anybody can call. You can. Anybody at all is welcome to call with a question. 888-318-7884. Up next is Johnny in Anaheim, California, listening on the Catholic Answers Live app. Thanks for downloading the app, Johnny, onto your phone. Your question for Father David McConey.
Oh, no problem. Good afternoon. My question is regarding the spiritual world involving angels and demons, and I was wondering, how does one get an advantage over the other? Do they fight, per se, how we see in the statues with St. Michael with the sword? I was just wondering, how does that work?
That's a great question. I don't know if I've thought much about it. Obviously, the sword is metaphorical for attack and victory. The angels don't have bodies, so they don't engage in that kind of warfare the way we imagine a World War II movie or something. But the war, I guess, would be really in the souls of the faithful, in the souls of every created human person. That's where the enemy wants to have dominance. That's where the enemy looks to strike, and that's why the angels intercede and help fight by conforming our desires to Christ's will, and by I imagine doing the kind of warfare and blocking those evil spirits in ways that we will never know in this world. So, yeah, dominance, the actual fight itself. It seems that we are the arena, we are the battlefield. I would be loath to imagine angels kind of wrestling off in the distance somewhere, but that's way above any kind of mystical understanding I have for sure. Sai, you have any thoughts on that?
No, I don't, except that when you think of yourself as the battlefield, really, it's almost your imagination that is the battlefield, where you're where you imagine the sin you might want to commit, or you imagine and one angel is the good angel is trying to encourage you to go with the imagination that's of the holy life, and the other one's trying to convince you to go with the other imagination. But it gives you a sense of responsibility. If you got angels fighting over you,
that's right.
That's a big deal.
It also shows you your worth in the Father's eyes, that he would send you these good angels to protect you. St. Athanasius, in his work on the Incarnation, argues that Christ is crucified this coming Friday a little bit off the ground on the cross, because that's where the evil spirits linger. And that because they don't have bodies, the worst the evil spirits can do is whisper in our desires, and they can try to coax us to think that sin is not that harmful. And that's precisely I mean, that's precisely why it's so important to enter into daily prayer and to make that St. Michael prayer.
Right. Well, I think you said we won't know how they battle until we've left this world, but we also, I don't think we'll know the precariousness of our situation. That these creatures, these demonic creatures, are of a much higher order than us, and we're so vulnerable before them if there weren't angels there protecting us. I don't know how they do it, but without them protecting us, I'm not strong enough to battle demons. Johnny, great question. Thank you so much. Father David McConey is our guest. Ask a Priest is our topic, which means you pick the topic. If you've got a question that's appropriate to ask a priest, whether you're Catholic or not, you are welcome to call 888-318-7884, 888-318-7884.
This is Dale Ahlquist of the American Chesterton Society, and you're listening to Catholic Answers Live.
Every Catholic has heard the challenge. How can you believe that? Don't you know the Bible says? It's a challenge we have to meet. If we can't reconcile apparent contradictions between Scripture and Catholic teaching, how can our faith survive? And if we can't answer our Protestant brothers and sisters, how will they ever come to embrace the fullness of the faith? In Meeting the Protestant Challenge, apologist Carlo Broussard gives you the knowledge and tools you need to answer 50 of the most common Bible-based objections to Catholicism. Be prepared to give an answer. Order your copy of Meeting the Protestant Challenge today by calling 844-239-4952, visiting shop.catholic.com, or asking for it at a good Catholic bookstore near you.
Many Catholics ignore the Bible. They say they have the Church instead. But we should embrace sacred Scripture not just as the revealed Word of God, but as a Catholic work, intimately connected with the Church from the earliest centuries. In The Bible as a Catholic Book, apologist Jimmy Akin shows how the Bible cannot exist apart from the Church, in its origins, in the truths it contains, in its careful preservation over the centuries. Scripture is inseparable from the Catholic faith. This is fitting, since both come from God for our salvation. If you're a Catholic who sometimes gets intimidated by the Bible as a Catholic Book will help you better understand and take pride in this gift that God gave the world through the Church. After all, Catholics are the original Bible Christians. Order your copy of The Bible as a Catholic Book today by calling 1-844-239-4952, visiting shop.catholic.com, or asking for it at a good Catholic bookstore near you.
Having to stay inside all day has led some to play video games with their free time.
But how much is too much?
Let's discuss tomorrow on Take Two with Jerry and Debbie.
Now back to Catholic Answers Live.
Welcome back to Catholic Answers Live. Father David McConey is our guest. It's your chance to ask a priest. If you have a question that you've wanted to ask a priest, you're welcome to call 888-318-7884. You can call if you're Catholic. You can call if you're not Catholic. Anybody's welcome. 888-318-7884. And what else you got to do right now? You don't need to watch more Netflix. You can pick up your phone and call a priest. 888-31-TRUTH. Joseph did. Joseph's in Norman, Oklahoma, listening to EWTN Radio on 97.3 FM. Joseph, your question for Father David McConey.
Yes, Father McConey. I want to know why men with schizophrenia can't be priests.
Wow. That's a really important question, Joseph, because schizophrenia and other kind of hindrances like that are really important and obviously very serious for many. And I guess the reason would be that the pressures of being a priest and the anxiety and stress that other people's problems can incur might only exacerbate that kind of mental condition. And I would think that the priest kind of has to be ready at any time, like little Regan, whom we baptized 7 years ago. You get a call at 2 or 3 in the morning, you get a call at noon, you have to be able to drop anything you're doing. So serious mental issues are usually a hindrance. I know many priests who serve faithfully who struggle with anxiety and even sometimes lower key depressions, but a schizophrenic would, I think, find the life very difficult, and I think it might be unfair for some of his parishioners to have to wonder who's gonna show up, if at all. I don't deal with schizophrenia, and I don't. Maybe I'm speaking just as an outsider, but it would seem to me if it were serious enough, it would impede a man from being able to serve fully.
What do you think, Joseph?
Yes.
Does that make sense?
Okay, thank you very much.
No,
Thank
but
you, bye-bye.
Joseph. Oh, okay, all right. I didn't mean to chase you off, Joseph. I think our signal got crossed there a little bit, but thank you very much for the call. Joseph, are you still there with us, or did you go? Oh, he went. Okay, fair enough. We'll go to Julia in Washington State, listening on the EWTN app. Hi, Julia. Your question for Father David McConey.
Hi, thanks for taking my call. Thank you, Father, for your vacation.
Oh, hi,
you guys
Julia.
Work there. You guys.
Where are you in
how
Washington?
much-
That was hard hit with the virus, wasn't it?
Yeah, it's really bad. We're at zero income since like the middle of last month, and it's pretty hard.
Oh, Julia, I'm sorry.
Let's add Julia to the prayer list.
Indeed, Julia, you've been locked down there for a long time in Washington State?
Yeah, since the middle of last month.
It's very hard. It's very hard. I'm sorry.
Father, I'm struggling right now because, even though we have a home business and it's based on travel, it is hard, but we Catholic homeschool and go to daily mass. And I am struggling so bad right now because it's like I just don't have the daily graces from God. I'm noticing that I snap at my kids, I snap at my husband. My husband said I was mean the other day, and it's like, that's not me. I just feel like, oh my goodness, I need the physical presence of Jesus. And I didn't realize the graces, just the everyday graces I get, because I don't notice any of the stuff that bothers me in the last month. I don't even notice it. I don't react. But without the daily graces of the physical presence of Jesus Christ living within through me, I'm really struggling. And I asked our priest for confession, and he hasn't responded. Last week, I know he's really busy, and I've been going through the scriptures. I've been doing my daily readings. I've been doing my daily reflection. Of course, we still do our family prayer time and rosary. But I'm on the phone for a second. And, I have 6 children. And it's like I miss Jesus. But the main reason I'm calling is not only to say that, but to ask you, first of all, how do I make Easter week more holy than, ever without, I go to the church to spend time with Jesus, but Father, it is not the same. It's not. I know God gives me grace, and I say, give it to me the same way as if I receive you. But I'm telling you, I can feel it. I can feel it. And,
Julia, let's let Father address that, and then we'll check back and see if that's adequate for you. But let's start there, Father. Julia's got 6
kids.
kids.
This is certainly the week of faithful women, and being with Christ on his way to Calvary. And so I do think the Lord will bless those tears and honor your hunger. And with the 6 children, it's good that you can even get to church still and make some time before the Blessed Sacrament, even though you can't receive, to be able to carve out that time. Now, how could this week be different? I would suggest 2 things. One, remember, we will return to normalcy. So don't waste the special graces being offered during this time of the desert, really. I mean, this is what we all kind of asked for in Lent, to be stripped and to be with Christ in the desert. And here we are. And it's hard. And secondly, don't be too hard on yourself. And maybe you and your husband could talk about little ways that you can get away and just recharge every day, every other day for a walk or just a trip to the church alone. But these are very unique times, and so you can't hold yourself to the same standards you used to have, but you can also not waste these graces that are being offered now that won't be here in 6 months. And I know it's hard, and I'm sorry for your home business, but I I think the Lord is obviously, He does honor those who help carry the cross, and you're certainly right in the middle of it.
Julia?
Yeah.
Did you want to follow up?
Oh, that helps a lot. I think I do get hard on myself, and I know I do. It's funny because I pray for, to love Jesus like the way He loves us, and it's so sacrificial. So it makes sense, it makes sense. But the other question I was going to ask is, the reading yesterday when it says, my God, why have you abandoned me? I know that comes from human feelings, and stuff, and that Jesus experienced, but there was also in the Psalms a prophecy. Could you expand on that so I can understand it a little better, please?
Right. Well, what Christ is doing there on the cross is quoting Psalm 22, and actually the psalm ends with God's fidelity. But my thinking is always this: when Christ speaks the Psalms, He's really praying for us. This is what the early church fathers held, that the Psalms were really Christ praying on behalf of humanity to the Father, giving the words that you and I have only somewhat superficially in our hearts. Christ brings expression to those. And if you step back and think, what is the greatest fear any human could have? It's ultimately to be abandoned by God. And the comforting, I think, message of that moment on the cross is that even there, even in that wonder or fear that we would be abandoned by God, God is present. That Christ Himself is speaking those words on our behalf. Why have you abandoned me? I feel so destitute. I feel so alone right now. And if we follow that psalm through, we see that actually it leads to the divine consolation that we all seek. And I take comfort in those words from the cross, even though they seem somewhat paradoxical, that God would cry out to God for His abandonment, that even there the divine is present, that God doesn't bless just the good stuff and the happy stuff, that even on the cross, even in our confusion, even in our brokenness, God is present. If that helps, that's how I've always understood that passage.
Julia?
Well, didn't make perfect sense. Thank you.
Yeah.
Julia, I wonder if you really heard what Father said about it's okay to have time for yourself. Maybe your husband can give you a half hour, just some time for yourself, because moms need it too. And
oh my gosh, moms need it more than anyone.
Right, but often moms giving to everyone and wanting to keep everything rolling, even when the world makes it impossible for everything to go on as it had. And so a little piece apart on your own is okay. And I hope you can maybe ask your husband for that.
Yeah, thanks. I do a 3-mile walk every day and pray my rosary by myself. And we pray with the kids at night. But that is my uninterrupted time with God.
Praise God.
I've been doing it for 15 years. It's my same time. But thank you. It is very, very helpful.
Well, God bless you, sister.
If you've been walking 3 miles every day for 15 years, Julia, you might want to get home. No, I'm teasing.
She doesn't just go in one direction.
Yeah. She's now in Montana.
At a certain point, she turns around and goes back. Although I'm sure there are many moms who the temptation presents itself to just keep walking in that one direction. Julia, many, many people praying for you. I can tell you right now, we're on the air all around the world, and they hear about that mom home with 6 kids in Washington State at this moment, where Washington State is the epicenter of all this, and there's many prayers going out your way. So thank you very much. I hope that what Father said was helpful to you, and please call back another time or have one of the kids call. We love having kids call here. God bless you, sister. We'll take a quick break. We'll be right back with more Ask a Priest with Father David Maccone right after this on Catholic Answers Live.
Stay with us for more Catholic Answers Live.
The Aquinas Writing Advantage program is part of Homeschool Connections' set of online courses for your Catholic homeschool. Homeschool Connections' website is homeschoolconnections.com.
Do you love praying for people? Have you ever wanted to use your gift of prayer to share Jesus with others and build up the body of Christ? Start a public prayer station with St. Paul Street Evangelization. Listen to people's needs, pray with them, or invite them to meet you at church. St. Paul Street Evangelization can help you get started. Find out how at streetevangelization.com. That's streetevangelization.com.
EWTN, teaching the truth.
I have wanted to thank you so very much. Thank God you guys are here for us. Believe it. I just can't believe all that you've done and how you've stuck with it. Many times when I think I can't do something, I think about some of the things that you've talked about.
EWTN. Live truth. Live Catholic.
Catholic Answers Live. Father David McConey with us, and your questions are welcome, whether you're Catholic or not. If you've got a question for a priest, you're welcome to call and ask. 888-318-7884 is the number, 888-318-7884. I don't recall if this hour we've had non-Catholics call, but I really do want to stress we're happy to talk with non-Catholics. If something about Catholicism bugs you, or if something about Catholicism is fascinating to you and you'd just like to know about it, you're welcome to call 888-318-7884. Up next, Don in Kentucky. Don, are you there with us?
Yeah, I'm here. How are you doing?
Very well. Thank you, Don. Your question for Father.
Yeah, in the book of Job, that book has kind of troubled me a little bit, because if you look at the amount of devastation that God allows Satan to wrought against this person, Job. I mean, right. He lets him kill his wife and his children and take his property. Just destroy his property. I was just curious. What are your thoughts on that? What do you think about just the Book of Job and the amount of devastation God allowed Satan to wreak on this guy?
Sound like you want it out of the Bible, Don. Would you like Father to take it out of the Bible? Is that your feeling?
Yeah, I'd like it to turn around, and in the end, because the end of the story, it sounds like a good ending, right? Oh, and he's happy, and he got all the stuff back even more. But what he didn't get back, he didn't get his wife and children back. He got a new wife and new children, and that's a problem for me.
It is a problem. I mean, the incommutability of human persons is something you can't replace. We're not like puppies. You lose one, you go get a couple more. And I'm sure there have been reflections on this, but it's quite easy, like you say, Don, to make sense of the land and the animals and all the other things being replaced. But that family member, maybe he had some kind of consolation that they were with the Lord now. But I have to admit, I've never been able to wrap my mind around that either, because it seems at first glance, this is not the way God works. He doesn't just put other people in our life to make up for those that we lost. But he also promises eternal union. So imagine Job if I had to bet, he had some kind of special grace of understanding that he would be with his wife and children forever, because they too were faithful Jews. So that would be a very simple blush of an answer.
I feel like I might be much holier than the two of you, because I love the Book of Job, and perhaps that indicates that I'm very saintly. I don't know. But it all seems to come down to that phrase, where were you when I laid the foundations of the world? That seems to me the whole point of the book is there is a limit to what you can know, because You're not me. I'm God and you are not.
And the truth is, after the fall, we all forfeited our right to life to the Lord. I mean, nobody has a claim on his or her own life anymore. In fact, Thomas Aquinas has a brilliant question in the Summa. He says, could God have commanded Adam to take Eve's life before the fall? He said, well, no, of course not. Before the fall, no one relinquished their life. But after the fall, all of life now belongs to the Lord, and how he decides to take it, like Abraham and Isaac, like Job's children. I mean, that's ultimately not a violation of justice, because we've all forfeited that right. So even though it's hard to swallow, there is a certain logic to the Book of Job, as sad as it could be, or as confusing as it might be.
Don, I wonder what you make of all that, and particularly my theory that I'm holier than the two of you.
Well, I'll tell you what, the part, I guess, that, on my own I came up with is, in the eyes of God, death is not a bad thing. And in the eyes of Christians, it's not either, because, as you mentioned in your answer, that potentially Job knew he would see them again,
Mm-hmm.
So that's the best I can come up with, because, it would be very easy to say, well, man, that was evil of God to let that happen. But in the eyes of God, death is not a bad thing. Those family members, went to heaven potentially.
That's right.
And Job would see him again. So I think that's what you told me. So.
And I think that's what Lent is supposed to be about, to raise our sights and understand that this world is just a drop in the bucket compared to eternity. And so the fasts and the sacrifices and even the losses aren't ultimately the last word. And they're, in fact, invitations to live in a different kind of way while we're here. Anybody who's lost a parent knows that. And whether you have to say goodbye to your mom or dad at 60, 70, 80, or even 100, you still have to say goodbye. And so as sad as the book of Job is, it's very real.
That's where you guys are messing up my theory that I'm holier than you two now. All right. Don, thanks for that. Are you satisfied?
Oh, yeah. Thanks, guys. I appreciate it. You have good
Okay. God bless you, brother. Let's go to Tristan in Toronto, Ontario, Canada. Tristan, your question for Father David McConey.
Hi, Father. I have a question for you. How do you explain, it's more technical stuff, it's more on, how do you explain the different rankings among the cardinals? Like, if I just did a wiki search and I found out the other day that there are rankings within the cardinals, like cardinal, priest, bishop, and deacon, and protodeacon. So how do you explain the rankings and their different roles?
Oh, wow. Great question. Well, the difference isn't so much in their being cardinal. The question of difference lies in whether they have another ecclesial office. For example, we just not long ago lost Cardinal Avery Dulles. He was only a priest, but because of his theological contributions, he was elevated to the role of cardinal, which is oftentimes an honorary title in recognition of a priest's or bishop's contribution to the church, to the area of theology, to the missions perhaps. What distinguishes these is what they enjoy in terms of clerical office, whether it be bishop, priest, or deacon. There have even been invitations. Jacques Maritain was a lay theologian, philosopher during Vatican II, and he was actually offered the cardinalate, which he did turn down. So even that's possible. So he would be, as a lay person, ranked, if you will, below the priests and the deacons and the bishops. So I think that's where the differences come in. It's not so much as cardinal, but it says cardinal bishop, cardinal priest, cardinal deacon, or so on. Does that make sense?
Makes sense. Thank you so much.
Thank you. That's an exotic question.
I know, that was very technical. As a matter of fact, I would bet that the majority of Catholics on the planet Earth don't know that there are 3 different levels of cardinals.
Well, the word cardinal, like cardinal virtue, comes from the Greek word meaning hinge, because Plato was the first one to call the 4 virtues of temperance, fortitude, justice, and prudence the cardinal virtues, because those are the things upon which the good life hinges. The door to happiness hinges on keeping yourself, if you will, in check, being wise, being just, being courageous. And so the cardinal is the hinge cleric, if you will, between the Pope and the rest of the bishops. They're the ones that determine the next Holy Father, and so they're the hinge, if you will, to our visible sign of unity and leadership.
Man, sometimes you can just see that Jesuit education paying off. You really can. It just comes pouring out. Pat in Wyoming, you're next. Oh, hang on, Pat. Let me give out the number in case somebody else wants to call. 888-318-7884. Go ahead, Pat. Your question for Father.
Hi, my question is, I've been making rosaries since I've been stuck in the house. And should these be blessed before I send them off?
I wouldn't, because if you send them off, they get lost in the mail. I mean, I would wait for the person to receive them and then have them blessed locally.
Okay, how about if I give one to a homeless person?
If you can get it blessed, great. If not, let them know that. That might be their invitation to reach out to their local pastor, local parish. But certainly, by all means, I would distribute the rosary, even if you can't get it blessed. Because what does it mean to bless something? It means to use it for religious purposes, right? Not to use it as jewelry or to use it as something mundane or secular. And because you may not know what the person will ultimately do with that rosary, it might be better to let them have it blessed when they understand what it's ultimately for.
Okay, good point. Wow,
what a great ministry that you have, though. How many are you making a day, Pat?
Oh, I don't know. Sometimes I get tired of doing it. So I've probably made 75 or 80 in the last couple of weeks.
God bless you.
God love you.
Wow. Well, you're making the rest of us look bad, Pat. I mean, I don't even want to tell you what I've been doing during the coronavirus. I have not made 70. Well, I guess it's not all about me. Pat, and so you have homeless folks that you might just see out in the street that you'll say, here, I've got a rosary for you?
Well, what I did was there's a rescue mission in a city near us, and I just went down to where the people are, and I saw some people coming out of a building that I knew was associated, and I said, would you like to have some rosaries? And two ladies said no, and the next one said yes.
Yeah, great.
Oh,
good for
wonderful.
You. Well, what also might be a nice ministry, if you could, is those little booklets on how to pray the rosary. Because I fear sometimes that people look at a rosary and the first thing they think of is jewelry, necklace. But if you were to able to find those little 5-cent booklets of the rosary pattern, what prayers to pray, and the mysteries therein, that might be a helpful side ministry too. Or maybe you could guilt the lazy like Cy into helping you supplement your work.
Pat, send me an email at radio@catholic.com, and we'll get you some books on how to pray the rosary. Okay, Father.
All right, Pat, we did it.
I'm trying to remain lazy during the pandemic. Please,
you got 4 days to change that.
I got to go to one last caller. I think we can get one more caller in. So, Pat, I will say, excuse me. Jean, are you there with us, Jean?
Jean.
Nope. Jean?
Yes.
Hi, Jean. You are
Hello.
on the air. Jean, you're on the air. Your question for Father McConey.
Great. I've always wondered, is there time in purgatory? Because the soul is changing. It's becoming holy, but the soul is kind of immortal. The soul doesn't die, but it's changing.
That's
So
right.
is there time in purgatory?
Yes. The soul is eternal, but even eternal souls undergo changes in time when they descend into the created realm. And remember the old prayer cards, 450 days off purgatory, 350. So there is time in purgatory. Exactly how it's measured, obviously, I don't know. But it's not an eternal state yet. It's a transitory state, right? Those in purgatory will eventually be released into heaven. So there is movement, there is time, there is change there, unlike heaven or hell. Does that make sense?
Well, yeah, it's kind of what I thought. I just kind of wanted confirmation.
Good.
Yes.
Yeah,
As a matter of fact,
God.
if you get your confirmation, you might spend less time in purgatory. I don't know how that works, but that's probably not good sacramental theology. I don't know, but I tried something. No. I'll rate the jokes, Father. Okay, I'll rate the jokes.
Thank you, but that's a good question.
Jean, thank you very much for the question. So we can imagine, Jean's point, I loved her thinking, the way she thought about it philosophically, that if there's change, there has to be time.
That's right.
That's almost like St. Augustine level. That's deep stuff right there.
That's Book 11 of the Confessions right there.
Okay, now tell me what Book 11 of the Confessions is. Like, I've read them. Come on.
It's all on time. It's one of the
is.
first Christian analyses of time, yeah. It's an incredible thing. Because he talks about, look, there's no past. The past only exists in your memory. There's no future. It only exists in your anticipation. The only thing you have right now in terms of time is the present. And those who want to live like God learn to live in the now, right now. They don't keep talking about the high school past they made 20 years ago. They don't start thinking about how beautiful they're going to be next year. They live as they are right now, and that's the most divine way to live, because God lives only in the present, because that's all there is for the divine. There is no past or future. And ultimately for us, there isn't either. We just fool ourselves into thinking so.
Oh, fascinating.
It is. Yeah. It really is an amazing book.
Right. Again, Father David McConey, our guest, I want to let you know about this week, Holy Week. As I said, we're going to be here with you throughout Holy Week. Tomorrow we'll have 2 hours of open forum, and then we'll continue the programming throughout the week. We hope that you will be with us. We've got some wonderful Good Friday programming, especially in the light of the fact that many people won't be able to make it inside of a church on Good Friday. Father McConey, may we have your blessing before we go?
Sure, of course, through the intercession of these holy women of this week, Martha and Mary, may Almighty God bless all of you listening, your families, Julia, you and your children, and all those who cry out for the hunger of the Eucharist. May we be restored in the name of the Father, Son, and Holy Spirit. Amen.
Amen. Thank you, Father. We'll see you tomorrow, God willing, right here on Catholic Answers Live.